Okay, OOPex002. This is the question paper here with regards to you asked to create a product class. One thing that often isn't mentioned in your guys' assessments or whatnot is actually you've got to create a project to do it within. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. It's not always included in the instructions because it's assumed that you'd have to create that. So I'm going to start the new project by clicking on the new project icon or file new project, and I'm going to add on, let me just get rid of this thing, Java application. You'll see as well you can actually also create C++ and connect a lot of different languages to NetBeans and use the IDE for multiple different languages, but obviously it's predominantly coded for Java. So we're going to create this under the actual exercise under memo, so we'll go under IT general resources. So you choose your location, don't forget to do that, especially in assessments. Your teacher won't be able to mark it if it's in the wrong place. And I'm going to call it memo. Okay, I'm not going to create a main class, so I'm unticking that option there and go finish. Once you've done that, you're going to create yourself a new class. The question asks us to create a class called product, so I'm just going to open up both at the same time. And you'll see it's asking me to create a class called product. So I'm going to right click on it, go new Java class. Now in here we're going to give it a name, product, and the important part is you choose a package. It's not specified, I just normally call mine Pacman. You could logically break your project into multiple different packages to store different classes grouped together. I've done that in a couple of my projects to make it easier to manage. When I know I'm working with a radio station, or it's in a radio station package. If I'm working with a proposal, it's under proposals. If it's under etc., etc. So you would group according to package. I just delete the comments. You can leave the author in if you want. You don't really need those comments. The main thing you need is you need to know the package and the class name. So public class product. The first two questions, it has there the fields. It's got a minus sign in front, which means it's private. It then says the data type. It then tells you the name given or how you would refer to that variable or that data that's in that variable. And the name that we can refer to in this case is name. So we're going to say it's private because of the negative sign in front of it. The data type is string, and the name that we give it is name. And the next two are both integers. So what I can do is I can go private int cost price, comma stock. So I don't have to actually code those separately. I'm going to zoom in on this because it's a bit too small. I'm going to minimize this thing so you can maybe perhaps see this a bit better. Okay, so you can code it on the right hand side. Is that big enough there, guys? Okay. Now the next thing that we've got is we're going to be if we go further down, this method here has no return type. So if I zoom in on that, you'll see that this method has no return type, and it's also got the same name as the class, which means it's our constructor, and the purpose of the constructor is to initialize all fields. So both this top one and this one are both constructors. This one contains the same parameters as the R field, so this is a fully parameterized constructor, and this one is a default constructor. So let's code that, and the easy thing about it is you use a shortcut key, alt insert, you go constructor. Now this would not come up if you coded your variables or your fields incorrectly. This would not pop up. So if this doesn't pop up, you haven't coded with inside your class, because remember you have to be inside your open curly brackets and close curly brackets. You have to be in your class, and you have to have created them with the correct, and you could not have initialized them. You could not give them values up here. If you give them values up here, it will not allow you to do this. So you generate for all three of them, and we're going to generate, and that's now my fully parameterized constructor. Now, just so you guys have more of an understanding of this, you'll see their string name has the same. These three have the same variable names as these ones. So what happens is they actually hide these ones. So name refers to this, and you'll see NetBeans or the IDE will highlight them to show you that this is referring to that. And when I go this dot name, you'll see it goes green because that's referring to the field. And when I go this, it's referring to the class's field name. So this name is a local. The parameter only exists between that open curly bracket and that open curly bracket. technically these fields only exist between that curly bracket and that curly bracket. Java will automatically unreserve that memory location when it exits that curly bracket. So while a product or the instance of this class, which is an object, we call it an object when you create a instance of the product. In other words, for example, Coke. When you create that instance, that Coke, while that Coke exists, these fields exist. But this only exists while this method is being run. Once this method's been completed, these local variables no longer exist. But this name does. So this just refers to the other one. Now, I want to alt insert again. I'm going to create a constructor, this time not tick any of the parameters. And in your default constructor, you have to give them default values. You might be specified in your test saying, give the default values of X, Y, and Z. So for example, default products are cheese, I don't know, bacon is your default product. But in this case, defaultly, you would just leave them as blank. And cost price would be 0 and stock would be 0. So defaultly, you just give them 0 values or null values, so that they won't actually so at least that memory location has been initialized, so we can refer to it. That's the reason why we do it. If you haven't initialized, you cannot refer to that location. Okay, so we've created our constructors, and if we take a look at our next question, it's the get name. Now our get name here, it tells me it's plus, which means it's public. It gives me the name of the method. There's no parameters, but it tells me that the return type is a string. So it's going to receive no parameters, but it's going to return a string. So what we do, okay, I'm actually, in this case, we don't actually need to worry about it too much, because what we're actually doing here, I've now swapped the windows around, that's going to be a bit annoying. These are my getters and setters. If I look all the way down there, this is a getter, this is a setter, this is a getter, this is a setter, otherwise called my accessors and mutators. Now, those, because these are private, you can't access these values directly. So you create getters and setters for you to be able to change the values. So literally, just to show you what I did there, is I pressed Alt Insert, I said getters and setters, I then ticked the top here, so I want to create getters and setters for cost price, name, and stock. When I do that, you'll see it'll automatically generate all my setters and getters. And you'll see there my get name, which is the one that we want to start off with, returns a string and returns a string name. And my setters change the value of the field. And the reason why we do this, it's a term called encapsulation. And the reason why we do encapsulation is, one, it makes my product object more secure. So for example, I might not want to allow the user to have a set cost price. Once the cost price is set, it's set. Or I might want to check that data before I change the value. I could have reasons for not allowing people to access this directly. And also to allow for simplicity. You might hide some of these variables so that it does not, so when users access it, they don't see everything that's there and it'll confuse them. Okay, so we created all our accessors and mutators, or otherwise called our setters and getters. And we're now going to create our toString. Now in this case, it just says plus toString string. Actually, there's an option here. You can do Alt Insert. Let me just undo it, because otherwise I can't redo it once it's done. You'll see that when you press Alt Insert, there's the option to do a getter, a setter, and there's another option that says getter and setter. So if you choose the getter and setter, it will do both of them for you. So then you don't have to worry about doing getters then setters. You can just do both at the same time. Now, the next question is the toString. So Alt Insert, luckily the toString is created for us. And here it'll give you the options. What fields do you want to return in your toString? Remember, the toString method's purpose is to give a text representation of the object. So remember, the object is the instance of the class. Remember, the class is the blueprint for objects. So all objects will take on a class structure. So the class is like the blueprint. So you could look at it as a cookie and a cookie cutter. So like when you create a cookie cutter, it defines the shape of the object. And then you would add different dough and you would cut different cookies and you'll create different objects, which could be like your different cookies. So I'm going to say I want to return all of them, and it would return it in a product, open curly brackets, name is equal to name, cost price equal to cost price. Now, it returns it in a strange sort of format. I'm going to, into CGI, not follow this the exercise right now. I'm going to start by creating my user interface already, and this is not the way I suggest you do it. I'm just doing it this way so you can see what we've done so far, so you can kind of understand what we're doing rather than just regurgitate it. Now, what we've done so far is we've created a class called product. So in my user interface, I can go in my main, which will run when I press play. I can go product P is equal to new product. Now, in that new product, I can choose the default constructor, and that would create it using the default constructor, or I could create I could use my fully parameterized constructor where I need to send through the name. So let's say Coke, cost price of 10, stock of, like, let's say 120. Okay, so I could use my default constructor to create an instance of this. Declares it. This will create the instance. This will say there exists a product. I'm going to refer to it by the letter P, so P would refer to this product. Equals new product actually uses or creates the object in RAM, and it actually creates it until you've initialized that it physically doesn't actually exist. So there's two steps in that, and I've done it the same for P2. Now P doesn't have any value, so I can use the .set. So for example, I can now go use the .set name, and I can say bacon. Now, a very important thing is I cannot do this. I cannot change a value until I have used a constructor. P does not exist, and also I cannot even do so I can't, and also you cannot do the following either. The reason why is until you use the constructor, no memory reservation has been given to it. It doesn't actually physically exist in RAM, so you can't set the name of it. That's why we sometimes create a default constructor, so you can initialize it so it can be used later on, and we know that it physically exists in RAM. Until you use a constructor to initialize an object, that object does not exist. It is just simply a pointer to a certain structure. It knows what kind of thing it's going to be, but it doesn't exist at all. So it's very important that you do need to use your constructors. Here I'm just showing you how to use your setters, and the purposes of setters is to give values to cost price of bacon is going to be 20, and we're going to have a lot of bacon. 1,050.85. Okay. Now that I've got those options, I'm just going to print out a couple of them. I'm just going to print out P1, and then I'm going to put an enter, which is a \n, and P2. So all I'm showing you now is, and the interesting, sorry, it's just called P and P2. The interesting thing here, if I go P.toString and P2.toString, you'll notice that it will return the string in a very, it's a product, open curly brackets, name is equal to bacon, cost price 20, stock 1,085, and Coke the same sort of thing. Now, interestingly, if I get rid of, sorry, I wasn't zoomed in here. If I get rid of this toString, you'll notice that when I run it, it will give me the exact same results. So when the program is expecting a text, when it's expecting text, it will automatically call the toString. I would suggest for now you guys leave it there, because it's an extra thing to have to remember, but it's just for interest's sake that your toString is the default. When expecting a string, it will run the toString, and that's very important when you start working with GUI objects and you embed classes into a JList or whatever. It's a toString that actually is displayed inside the GUI object. So it's important that you understand that you need to use toStrings. You can't have a get details or get string, because it won't actually work with GUI objects. So it's important to utilize that. So we see how we can create an instance now, and we can call the toString. Now, the next question in this paper tells us modify the toString because we think it looks ugly, and it asks us to display it in the following. So it will say the name of the product, open square brackets, the stock, and then the cost. And you'll see here Coke 10. Hey, it's ironic, I actually chose the exact same dollar, I think. And I made 120 stock. Let me give the exact same stock as what I showed in the question paper, so we can see it like that. Now, we want to get this right. We want to make this string look like this. So first of all, we don't want to say product and we don't want to say name. We actually want to start with the name, and that because that's what the first thing we want to display. The next thing we want to display is an open square brackets and I think a space before it. So we're going to add, or in this case, when you add text to text, you're appending it. In other words, adding it onto the end. So if I go space, open square brackets, it will then be opening the square brackets. I then want the stock. So I don't want cost price here, I want stock. That's not how you spell stock. Just testing you guys. And then you're going to close square brackets. And then I've got a space. Now we want an R and another space. And it's quite important, and here we want the cost price. And we end that. So now when we run it, and this is why I coded the user interface before really moving on, because I wanted to test it. And you'll check here, it says there bacon 1085 stock 20 rand, Coke 10 stock 10 rand. So it presents it as we want it to present. Okay, so I'm happy with that. It follows that. Now it starts to ask us typed methods, or now it starts us more complex methods. In this case, it's asking us to create a method called, so we always look for three things. And the three things we look for, I'm going to actually make a note of this so that you can keep track of it. We're looking for, we look for the name of the method. We look for what the method will receive, which is otherwise called parameters. We need to know which parameters and what type it returns, if anything. So, when you're getting asked to create a specific method, these are the questions you ask. And in the first case, what is this name of this method? It is get sales price. So that's what we want to call it. What will it receive? And it says there that will receive the markup percentage. So it's going to receive a markup percentage. And what data type is that going to be? It's going to be an integer. As a whole number, because it's a whole numbers are integers, so 20 would represent that. So we're going to receive a markup percentage, and that could be an integer. I'm just going to call it a markup. I don't see why I need to call it a longer name. And a data type of it returns, and will return the sale price of the product. So it's going to return the sales price, which is also going to be a integer. So we have picked up what it's going to be called, what it's going to receive, and what it's going to return. So now we can go ahead with this text file. We're going to keep note of this text file. I'm going to keep this up at the top. And you guys during your tests or in any scenario, you can look at it like this. And I'm now going to keep my NetBeans open. I'm just going to minimize it a little bit. And we're now going to code this method. So now, when I'm in my product here, first thing is public. Now, the second thing we need to know is what it returns. In this case, it's going to return a integer. What is the name of the method? It's going to be called get sales price. What is it going to receive? It's going to receive an integer of the markup. I am then going to return, what I suggest you guys do is create the blank version. So sales price, we just set it to be 0. We then return sales price. So all I've done is I've created a temporary variable of what I want to return, set it to a blank version of it, and returned it. The reason why I do this is because that makes sure I get some of the marks. My method structure is 100% correct. I have read the question, I've understood the method structure, I've completed that method structure. Even if you don't know how to do the method, this would get you marks. Even in a matric final exam, this would get you marks for setting up your structure correctly, according to the question. So those are the three things you look at. Technically, I suppose you're looking at what it returns, what the name, and what it's going to receive. Those are the three things you're looking at. Okay. Now, how are we going to work out the sales price? And it does tell you here, sales price is the I don't know if it does tell me there, but we all know how to work up a sales price. So if we wanted to do sales price would equal to cost price plus cost price times markup divided by 100. That's a calculation you should all know how to work out sales price from markup. I do believe that's common knowledge. Although in your guys' exams, I would often thanks for the thumbs up, Mitchell. He got his name in. That's now I've lost train of thought. In your guys' exam, I'll probably include the calculation because I really don't care if you understand the calculation. I just more care if you understand how to do it inside Java. Now, we've got that method. That method is correct. We can test it if we want. We could also potentially add it to our toString. It wasn't asked in the test, but I could add it to my toString by saying add spacebar plus get sales price. And you potentially could be asked that to add it to your toString. But in this case, it wasn't asked, so I'm not going to do that. Alright, the next question asks, create a method called getTotalStockValue, which will return the cost price of the product multiplied by the stock. So that's an easy enough question, but again, we're going to follow that structure we did earlier. First of all, what's the name of the method? The name of the method is getTotalStockValue. What is the data type it's going to receive? It doesn't mention anything about receiving anything, so nothing. Let's just say Fresca. Okay, that's old school. I don't think they sell Fresca anymore. And what is it going to return? It's going to return the cost price multiplied by the stock, so it's going to return stock value, which is a integer. Okay, so in this case, we're going to now start coding this with that text sheet in mind. So we're going to go public. What data type does it return? It returns an integer. It's called getTotalStockValue. We do not have any parameters. We have nothing, so we do not put anything in our parameters. Open curly brackets. We then simply return our cost price multiplied by our stock, and that's all that we need to do there. So our cost price multiplied by our stock. Yes, I see. I did spell it incorrectly. They're mentioning that I spelled my memo to OOPex002 as Momo. So if you guys are looking for the memo, it's Momo. Now what you guys will see, that's this question done. We're done with this section. We have created our class. We've created the methods that we got asked. It now asks us to create the main, declare 3 instances of the class. It says you can make up the data, print the toString, and get sales price and get stock values to both the user and the programmer. Okay, so now all we need to do is asking us to create the user interface, which I'd already started here. But in this case, it actually asked us to create 3 instances. I've created 2 so far. I prefer just using my fully parameterized constructors to do this. So I'm just going to create P3, and I'm going to call this new product. We're going to sell Coke, bacon. What else should I sell? I'm not going to sell that.
Come on, it's a theoretical. Stop typing it in there and then clicking backspace.
We shall sell. Yeah, someone's gonna give me a good suggestion at some point. Pizza. I like pizza. Alright, pizza cost price is going to be, how much is pizza going to cost us to make? It's going to cost us 32 rand. How much stock of pizza? We're going to have 10 pizzas. 100 pizzas. You don't. Unfortunately, with memory reservations, if you're running a 64-bit operating system, well, for example, integer as a data type, Google it quickly and let us know what the integer data type limit is in Java. But there is a size limit. Message it through on the group, Mitchell. Now, okay, so what you'll basically see is now I've created my 3 instances. Here's how I would print it to the programmer. The reason why I say to the programmer versus to the, let me just answer this question and I'll carry on recording. Okay, so I'm now also going to print out my P3.2 string. Now, this is to the programmer because it's to the command line. System.out.print line would print to the command line. We basically want to do the exact same thing. \n is my enter character, so that's a character that's reserved for entering a blank new line. And now to print to a user, now very important here, I have to use Control Spacebar when I go G-option pane. I can't just type in G-option pane. 1, because we've got to remember the case, but 2, when I do that, it imports G-option pane. So Java X is a project. Swing is a package in that project, and G-option pane is a class inside that package. And we're going to be using someone else's code, so it imports it to our class. Because we don't want to have our projects, we don't want to make every single class that possibly exists available to our projects, because then our projects will just be insanely big all the time, even if they're small projects. So it only imports what you need to use. And in this case, we want to import the option pane, and we're going to show message dialog. And again, make use of your Control Spacebar. The first component is the parent. Now we don't have any other GUI objects here, so we're going to have it null, which means there is no parent. So it is an orphan. And we're going to print out the exact same thing as we printed to the programmer, but now we're going to print that to the user. So this is to print to programmer, and this is to print to user. And remember to make use of your Control Spacebar. Also for your system.out.print line, the shortcut for that is just to go SOUT tab, and it will automatically create your system.out.print line. There, because it's quite small, system.out has to have that, so you don't need to import that. That just is there. Okay, so we're going to run this now just to show you that it does work. So when I press play, you'll see in the command line, which is now below the screen, you'll see it'll print out the 3 things, and as the user interface, it'll print out as well. So it's printed out the objects here. So we've got our 3 objects here. And apparently the integer size has just been messaged me. The 32-bit range in Java is that number to that number. Thank you, Mitchell. So just to zoom in on that. Damn it, it keeps changing my zoom. Okay, I'll put it here. So in Java, that is the 32 bits range. I don't know if there's a 64 bits, but I'm not sure directly on when Java, when you're coding it as a 32-bit Java program or a 64-bit. That can get quite confusing. I don't even know, maybe the integer sizes are the same anyway. But I've never really had to specify that. I think your Java virtual machine might determine that. Sorry, that's something I don't know. Okay, but thank you. Alright, that's the end of this video. Goodbye. Bye.